Tomorrow came and went as school life, mostly, just continued on. Classes still had to be attended, projects worked on, parties enjoyed, lunches grabbed, and coffees thrown back. Campus life went on. Alicia's hangover the next morning had been killer, and she hadn't remembered much at all of the previous night. Just her coming home, Maud yelling at her. She'd cried, she thought. Maud said she cared about her, that part stuck out, but after that, things were completely blank. A void of memory. Who knows what could have happened? Judging by the fact that she was wearing different clothes and was no longer wearing makeup, Maud had to have taken care of her. But to what extent? She wasn't going to think about it. It was just like when she came back all beat up. No reason to go reading into things when there's nothing to read into. Anyone would have done the same in Maud's position. Anyone decent, at least. Besides, it's not like she would get the chance to linger on it too long, because something much more important and much, much more frustrating was happening at home. Every time she opened that damn front door, she saw that curly-haired, sadistic goddess acting like she owned the place. Jessie. It would have been fine if that was it. Annoying but manageable, but that wasn't all. It's like Jessie made it a point to show as much PDA as possible around Alicia. Always hanging across Maud, saying sickly sweet things, all the while giving Alicia such pointed looks. Not to mention the passive-aggressive remarks, the little gestures when Maud wasn't looking, the general disapproval, the constant and incessant pressure of having someone in the house that treated you like an invader when she was the one behaving like a fucking parasite. She wanted a distraction. Preferably in the shape of a cute girl, but she was so sick and tired of sleeping over at other people's places. She wanted her own bed for once. Or, well, as much as she could call it her own bed. Why had she stopped bringing people home in the first place? For Maud? Jessie is there all the time. Wouldn't exactly be fair for her to be the only one allowed to bring someone over. To avoid Jessie's judgment? Why would she let her life be dictated by the gaze of a girl still hung up on a mistake from over a year ago? Yeah, she should bring someone home. Why not? It had been a bit since the last time. She felt like losing herself in between the legs of some cute, sweet thing. But where would she find one this time? There weren't really any parties happening tonight that she knew of, and everyone would be busy with club activities. Well, except for Jessie, of course. She'd been cutting back a little on practice to spend time with Maud, which she only knew because she'd made a point of purring to Maud about it whilst Alicia was trying to make breakfast. Hold on. If Jessie was back in the dorm, and she was going to have to interact with her anyways, didn't that mean that the swimming team had opened back up as an option? Oh man, she hadn't been to see swimming practice in a hot second. She wondered if there were any new members. Some girl who was relatively new to campus life looking for some initiation. Surely there'd be one. And by God there was. Mona was a sweet, brown-haired, brown-eyed little darling with bangs and a face dotted with freckles. Her skin had the paleness only achievable by someone who clearly didn't go out much, but she had a swimmer's body. Not only that, but she was so easy to flirt with. So fun to fluster. Smart, too. She'd even asked what her intentions were with the flirting, and of course Alicia had been honest. And clearly, Mona's curiosity had won out over her sense, because Alicia found herself walking side by side with her on the way back home. Mona was slightly taller than her, but with how she was looking at her, Alicia felt like she was tall enough to high-five an airplane pilot. This was a fantastic idea. And here we are. My roommate and her girlfriend might be home, but we don't have to talk to them if you don't want to, okay? We can just hang out in my room. I've got snacks. Mona clutched onto Alicia's arm, nerves hitting her as the reality of it all sank in. Yeah, that's okay. I'm sure they're cool, so I'm not, worried. Alicia smiled at her as she looked for her keys. You okay? You sound a little nervous. She leaned in towards Mona, whispering in her ear. I won't do anything you don't want me to, you know? You can leave any time. With a shiver, the girl shook her head. No, I'm just... It's... Alicia's amused voice interjected the stammering. Easy there. Use your words, pretty girl. Mona smiled shyly. It's just that I've never been with a girl before, and I've been wanting to try, and I just didn't expect it to be today. Alicia put a gentle hand on the side of Mona's face, brushing the bangs out of her hair fondly. Well, I'll take good care of you. So let's make it a good one, And if you don't think you've had enough after... She leaned forward, leaning her chin on the divot in her shoulder. We'll just have to go again until you have. She planted a small kiss on the girl's neck and then twisted the key in its lock, opening the front door. If there was anything about Jessie, she was certainly generous with her attention. Though Maud wondered if it was to a fault at this point. She'd been cutting practice short to go see her, leaving her teammates to pick up the slack. She assured Maud constantly that it was fine. It wasn't as if she was on scholarship, and her teammates needed to work a little harder anyways. Maud would always tighten her lips at that. She was the ace, after all. What kind of an example was it to the newcomers? Still, Maud wasn't in the team, so maybe Jessie was right. For now, Maud tried to enjoy the time Jessie was putting into her. You know, I'm gonna move out of the dorms pretty soon, Jessie began, a smile on her face as her fingers brushed through Maud's hair. I'm gonna move into this apartment just a little bit off campus. Maud raised an eyebrow, looking at her. Why? Isn't it more convenient to live on campus? To which Jessie shook her head, explaining that her parents were already helping her plan life post-graduation. Their conversation drifted towards what Jessie should get in the apartment, little details such as curtain color and couch choices. Maud, of course the avid Sims player, was delighted in helping choose the items. She scrolled through the IKEA catalog, pointing excitedly at certain items as Jessie encouraged her to put them in the cart. Jessie's eyes scanned over Maud with a content smile, as if she were watching something out of a dream play out right before her eyes. Do you like this couch throw? Jessie pointed to one perfectly matching Maud's hair. Oh, that is adorable, Maud gasped, flipping through the option. But the green one fits the aesthetic of your house much better. It'll match the green mugs from earlier. Jessie laughed, throwing her head back slightly. All right, sure, whatever you want. The door opened, revealing Alicia and another girl on her arm. Alicia led the way in, immediately spotting company on the couch. She waved to Maud with a little smile and then directed her attention towards Jessie. She hadn't really thought about it, but... Oh, she was going to hate this, huh? Maybe that would be fun. This was a good thing. Come on in. They don't bite. Though I won't promise the same for me. The timid girl stepped in, her face all blush and bashful smiles. Alicia! Oh my gosh, not in front of them. Since the night Alicia came home, drunk off her boots and sobbing on Maud's shoulder, Maud and her had come to a sort of truce. A silent agreement, an easy tolerance. She'd stopped picking on Maud so much, apart from the occasional teasing, and even then it was always light jabs. She saw Alicia give her a small smile, and she returned it without any fuss. At least, Maud did. Mona? Jessie's eyes widened. Her posture straightened as if lightning shot through her. What are you doing here? And with... Her eyes narrowed down at Alicia, no attempt to hide the disgust in her stare. Mona perked up at the familiar voice and then shot a beaming smile at Jessie, which quickly wavered as the air in the room was charged with electricity. Jessie, so you're the girlfriend. That's unexpected. Is everything okay? Questioningly, she looked at Alicia and towards Maud. Alicia readily answered Jessie's question, though, unflinchingly. Mona and I are just gonna be in my room and hang out. Don't worry, we won't disturb you, will we, cutie? Mona looked up at Alicia like a deer in headlights. Huh? Alicia grinned, tucking a strand of Mona's hair behind her ear. You can be quiet, can't you? Or, well, you'll try. She turned her back towards Jessie and Maud, a smug smile as she looped her arm around the waist of the flustered girl beside her. Knock if you need anything, but don't open the door. She motioned to lead Mona away, into the hallway leading to her bedroom. Maud offered a smile towards Mona, waving slightly. Hello, I'm Maud. Nice to meet you. Her eyes darted towards Jessie, who was already standing up. Steam was practically rushing out of her ears. She grabbed Alicia's shoulder, pulling her back to face her. Her eyebrows knitted in anger as her nose scrunched slightly. You know you can play this little innocent game with Maud and trick her, but Mona is off limits. Maud's eyebrow raised. Trick her? She's part of the swimming team and new to the school. Low move going for the ones who don't already know your reputation. You're out of line, Guerrero. I'm not going to have you taint her with your weird succubus tactics. Jessie grabbed Mona's forearm, tugging her slightly. Come on, Mona. Maud stood, approaching the fuss with folded arms. Jessie, I think you're taking this a bit too far. She's clearly consenting to be here, and Alicia wouldn't take anyone home if they didn't absolutely want to. Maud glanced at Mona apologetically. I am so sorry for this. You fucking don't get it, Maud! Don't speak to me like that! Maud shot a glare, like a gunshot down a cave. Mona stammered towards the apology, but was quickly brought to close her mouth at the sudden altercation that had formed in front of them. It's really okay, Jessie. I said yes, so... She mumbled timidly, clearly intimidated by the loud voices and the show of force. Alicia, however, was less inclined to shrink away this time. She put her hand on the shoulder, tugging at Mona's arm, stopping Jessie in her tracks and looking up at her with an enraged stare. Who the fuck do you think you are? She said it calmly, in an almost dangerously controlled voice. The heat gathering on her face and the balled-up fist by her side said more than enough about her actual feelings. I've ignored all your little insults. I've tolerated your dirty looks. I let you walk all over me for so fucking long, thinking I deserved it. But this? She nodded her head back towards Mona, her nostrils flaring angrily. So now you're not only judging every single fucking thing I do and say, now you're going to sabotage me too? She stepped back, pulling her hand away from Jessie, her blood still boiling. She was well aware of the anger Maud was showing right now, the hot water Jessie was in, the anxiety rushing through Mona, but she couldn't care less about any of that right now. None of it mattered. What's your end goal here, Jessie? Isolate me from everyone I care about in the guise of protecting them? Ruin my life on campus? Drive me away? Make me drop out? Give up my future? Do you want me to be miserable so fucking badly? Because I don't need your fucking help with that! She barked at Jessie, frustrated tears stinging at her eyes, but she swallowed them back, taking a deep breath in an attempt to stay calm. Mona? The mousy girl blinked. She'd been staring at her and Jessie with worry in her eyes, not quite knowing how to react to it all. She'd almost forgotten to respond. Yeah? Alicia took a deep breath in. We can go somewhere else if you want, but again, I won't force you. Mona swallowed with some difficulty, looking between Jessie and Alicia hesitantly, unsure of how she had landed in such a minefield. I think she slowly began to mutter, trailing into a long, uncertain pause. Maud! No, Maud stood firmly. She's obviously capable of making her own choices. If you see that as a mistake, then let it be her who decides to make it. Jessie's eyes narrowed down at Alicia. Part of what Alicia was saying was processed, and the other half merely slid off her. It was clear that she had no intention of listening to the small, red-headed beast. Whatever, Jessie huffed down at Alicia, taking Mona's arm. She's got practice and better things to do than have pity sex with you. Maud gasped, looking up towards Jessie with genuine horror. Jessie! How dare... That was completely uncalled for! Mona, I am so sorry. Jessie waved Alicia's anger off, taking Mona by the arm and tugging her towards the door. She could feel Maud's eyes sting on her nape as the door opened, but at this point all she really seemed to care about was Mona not being tainted by Alicia, whatever that meant to her. The door slammed behind them, echoing through the silence. Maud rolled her eyes, flipping the hair off her shoulder. Her gaze slowly came back towards Alicia. She recognized those frustrated eyes, tears threatening to form as Alicia steeled herself. She remembered Alicia's words about how Jessie was doing all of these small jabs on purpose. What was their relationship? Exes? Maud pursed her lips. Alicia, I'm really sorry, she sighed, her hand coming up to massage her temple. Are you okay? Alicia stared at the ground with an intense focus, as if the floor beneath her would disappear if she didn't keep an eye on it. In reality, though, she was just looking anywhere but at Jessie, anywhere but at Mona or Maud. She didn't want to see any kind of disappointment or worry. She heard the door open and then slam closed, as her fists clenched tighter, her nails biting at the palms of her hand. Tears stung at her eyes again. This was so fucking embarrassing. How long was Jessie going to make an absolute embarrassment of her? How long would she have to be a failure until Jessie was satisfied with her punishment? Surely she'd atoned for it by now, right? Surely. What do you think, Maud? Do you think I'm okay? Her voice broke as a hurt and furious look peeked out from under slightly dampened lashes. She gritted her teeth, her entire body clenched in anger, preventing it from going anywhere, doing anything. She wanted to punch something so badly, but she wouldn't. She had enough shame to deal with as is. There's a fucking monster living in my house, and she's doing everything in her goddamn power to fuck me over. She breathed in a sharp breath, shaky from angry tears. And I can't do anything about it because she's your girlfriend. I can't run away from her because she is always here, and now... She felt a surge of anger and helplessness rise up from within her chest. She crouched down, putting her hands in her hair and roughly tossing it around in an attempt to relieve any of the tension she was experiencing. Fuck! Maud frowned, resting her hands on her hips as she stared at Alicia. Why are you mad at me? I was the one who was defending you. You don't have to take that tone with me. She turned her face away for a moment, trying to ignore the rushing anger building in her face. Why was Alicia taking this all out on her? It's not like she's the one who yelled at her in the first place. Still, it was hard not to feel sympathetic when Alicia looked like that. The tension Alicia and Jessie displayed around each other was nothing explainable by mere surface-level dislike of one another. It was like two lions in a den. Two magnets of the same charge. They couldn't stand each other. Maud glanced down at Alicia, trying to seem a little more forgiving at Alicia's misdirected anger. Why do you guys hate each other so much, anyway? Alicia's hand stopped scratching at her scalp as her head tilted up to stare at Maud through a wild tangle of thin, red-tinted hair. Her expression was incredibly hard to read. Why do you guys hate each other so much? Is that what it looked like to Maud? Petty hatred? A two-sided rivalry of some kind? Just some bad blood to be resolved? It was unfair to think like that. Alicia knew that. Maud didn't know any better, and she would continue not to if she never told her, but what was she supposed to say? Because I'm scum that forced myself on your girlfriend a long time ago? Because I don't know how to do anything right? Because she needs a target for her tireless crusade of proving how good of a person she is? She didn't want to martyr herself. She didn't want to explain to Maud how one of her lowest points, her most pathetic moments, came in the shape of a girl that sat in their living room burying herself in her neck. Her face contorted into a pained, conflicted expression. She slowly rose to her feet. Her voice trembled slightly as she struggled to come up with an explanation. She stormed off suddenly in a burst of strained movement towards her bedroom door. I wonder why! She slammed the door behind her, shaking the walls as she shut herself in. Maud watched as Alicia stormed into her room like a child refusing a toy. She huffed at the bang of the door, muttering to herself. If you leaned in close, she would have picked up small hints of, why is she even mad at me? And always so mad all the time. I didn't even do anything. Jessie had returned later that night. The night air floated through the door at her entrance. It smelled of perfume and smoke all at once. Maud looked over from the couch, phone in hand, as she scrolled. You're back, she said plainly. Jessie stretched her arms upwards, giving a small nod as she shut the door behind her. Yep, I just had to take Mona back to the dorms and, She trailed off, looking toward Maud with curious eyes. Maud hadn't even spared her a few seconds, already looking back down at her phone. Jessie approached her with a small grin, crawling onto the couch as she planted a kiss on the side of Maud's head. Why, You missed me? Maud answered shortly. Aside from the fact that it was getting late, Maud didn't have the energy in her to be the sweet, lovey-dovey girlfriend at the moment. But it seemed as though Jessie was either oblivious to that or keen on ignoring it. Jessie glanced towards Maud's phone screen, seeing Maud scrolling through a selection of plates. Ooh, shopping for the apartment? Jessie smiled, toying with her hair. You're so cute. What? Oh, no, I'm gonna buy new plates for here. The old ones have a chip in them and it's bad luck to keep it. Jessie smiled towards her, planting a quick peck on Maud's jaw, which Maud so clearly ignored. Her legs folded to her chest and angled away from Jessie. As much as this should have been the clearest sign to her, Jessie merely pushed the conversation on. So, I've been thinking, she began, tracing circles on Maud's thigh. We've been dating for a while now, right? And you know how I'm getting that apartment? Jessie pulled Maud towards her with a soft smile, hands gently combing through the pale pink hair. Maud replied, lips tight. Well, I was thinking. Jessie leaned closer, her lips right next to Maud's ear. Only a few more centimeters and a kiss would have been planted. You should move in with me. Maud paused. She processed the statement for a second before turning to Jessie with wide eyes and furrowed brows. Are you serious? Jessie's face lit up, ready to join Maud in what she thought was an equal elation, but Maud quickly shot it down. Jessie, Maud sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. We've only been dating for a month. We barely know each other, and now you're asking me to move in with you? That's way too soon, don't you think? At this point, Maud had pulled away slightly from the embrace. I know, but I mean, think about it. Jessie took Maud's hands. Her thumb ran across Maud's knuckles, smooth and soft. You can decorate the place however you want. We can always see each other. You and I could wake up next to each other. Jessie planted a few kisses in Maud's hair. And no more having to deal with your pest of a roommate. It was as if lava began to flow as her blood did through her veins. Maud's face twisted in annoyance as she pulled away from the kisses in favor of an expression of irritation and disbelief.
Are you still seriously going on about that? You know what, I don't know what your history with Alicia is exactly, but as far as I've seen, you've been so unfairly rude to her. What is your issue with her exactly? Are you exes?
Jessie sighed, running a hand through her hair.
Look, all I'm saying is that she hasn't got the best reputation out there, okay? I mean, you're her roommate, you should know that. You see how many girls she sleeps around with and just leaves in the dust? What kind of good person does that exactly?
Maud rolled her eyes.
And that constitutes that she's a bad person. In my book, yeah, Jessie retorted. Someone who treats girls like playthings? Sounds pretty fucking bad to me, Maud.
Maud felt her nape begin to prickle with anger. The apples of her cheeks grew hot with annoyance as it took every fiber of her being to not raise her voice at such an ungodly hour. You do realize that, like, pretty much all the girls she brings back are willingly going with her, right? Like they're not some helpless creature that Alicia lured. She's not that kind of person.
And how do you know she isn't that kind of person?
Jessie stared.
How are you so sure that she is?
Because I've seen other people who whore around, and she is exactly like that. Maud's eyes widened. Her jaw went slack as the words shot right through her. Such harsh words from someone she thought was only the most delicate with them.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Maud rose from the couch, her hands spread to her side as if she was disgusted by the mere sight of Jessie. She whipped back around towards Jessie, who had already stood from the couch.
You didn't just fucking call her that! How dare you? What did she ever do to you?
She fucking came on to me when we were at a party. Jessie approached Maud, who stood her ground firmly. She thought just because I listened to her moan about her stupid fucking ex that I was the best next thing? The rebound? Are you serious? I don't give a fuck if she apologized. You shouldn't be hanging around her. Maud's expression was now a mix of pure shock at the words and horror of who stood in front of her. She would need to process this all later, but for now the anger was bubbling over like a pot of water.
Okay, look, I understand why you're upset about that. I get it. You don't even have to accept the apology. But if you're going to be upset at her, be upset at her for that then.
Maud turned and began walking towards the kitchen counter, trying to create some distance between them.
But you're here making assumptions about her and calling her a whore? Telling me who I should and shouldn't be around? Do you really think I'm that dumb and easy to manipulate?
Jessie groaned, rubbing a hand across her face.
You know, I don't know. Maybe she's just brainwashed you to the point where you're acting this crazy.
Maud turned back towards her, a straight glare in her wide eyes. She scoffed, raising a hand as if to stop Jessie.
Oh, so I'm crazy now. Now I'm the crazy one.
Maud laughed, though nothing was funny.
I'm sorry that I don't want my girlfriend of 1 month to be telling me who I can and can't be friends with. I'm an adult, Jessie. I can figure out who I want to be in my life or not. And you know what? She pinched the bridge of her nose. I'm not so sure I want to see you right now.
Jessie narrowed her stare, her fists balled up in pent-up frustration, knuckles turning white. She rolled her eyes, grabbing her coat roughly. Whatever. With a swing of the door, Jessie left, leaving nothing but the faint smell of chlorine and the slam of a door. Maud clenched her jaw, holding her arms as she stood there for a moment. She let the silence of the apartment surround her, her thumbs running back and forth across her arm. Quiet fell over the apartment like a blanket, and after a few minutes of the dead air still heavy with frustration lingering, it broke with the slight creaking of Alicia's bedroom door. Slowly she pushed her way through the gap like some kind of pink, pale spectre. As she set a single step out of the door, darkening the hallway, a few things became immediately obvious. First, she was dressed in sleepwear, light pink pajamas dotted with bright red strawberry motifs. A big black blanket was wrapped around her shoulders like a cloak, her hands pinching the ends of it together in front of her chest. She was barefoot, her hair was a little unkempt, her cheeks were wet, Her eyes were puffy and her nose was red. Her body language was different. It was guarded, fragile, weak. Like a stiff wind could blow her over. Her steps uncertain and exploratory, hands balled tight around the blanket to make sure it stays in place, as if it would protect her from the rest of the world. It was clear she'd been crying, and she hadn't entirely stopped before making her way out. She shuffled a few more steps forward, so the overhead light in the living room lit her up as she stared at the closed door. She sniffed once, wanting to look over to Maud, but too afraid to meet her gaze. She just stood there, hands in front, clutching the blanket, fidgeting nervously as the salty tears tickled her face. She looked almost sweet like this. Childlike, in a way, like a little girl walking into her mother's bedroom after she had a nightmare. For the first time, her personality took up an amount of space befitting her size. She felt and looked small, so very small. Maud could feel her heart pounding in her ears, the rush of adrenaline still lingering like pepper on her tongue. Jessie's words were teeth, and they sunk into Maud, breaking skin. Maud's lips became tight, rubbing her arms as she tried to calm herself from the ghost of a fight left in front of her. The gravity of what just happened weighed on her stomach. It was only until Alicia's door opened that Maud made an attempt to pull herself together. She straightened herself slightly, fixing her hair. Alicia's footsteps grew closer and closer. There was no way she couldn't have heard it. Unless she slept like a rock, Maud was sure she at least caught the tail end of it. An odd sense of guilt seeped into Maud, as if she had only just opened her eyes to what was really happening. Maud glanced back at Alicia for a moment, hands still holding arms.
Oh, did you, hear all that?
Alicia nodded demurely, confirming it with a slight hesitation, but unwilling to risk her voice breaking if she spoke. Actually, it wasn't even about that. A stone weighed down her tongue, and rope had tightened around her throat. No words were coming out, not until they were coaxed, like a cornered feral kitten. There were so many things she wanted to say, but what was there to say? Sorry? Thank you? Why? She just stood there, quietly, holding back tears. Her eyes prickled. Maud nodded, taking in a big inhale with it. What was it her mother always said? Or rather, not what she said, but what she enforced. Those tears were something shameful, like an old stuffed toy or a baby blanket clung onto throughout the years. For a moment, Maud wondered how it would have been like to hold on to it, to not rush for adulthood so fast and, in turn, shove childhood into her chest. Because that's where tears came from anyway. A child in your chest crying out. It shouldn't be this hard to be loved, should it? Was there something she missed? Some kind of seminar on how to act when in love? Everyone seemed to be on the same page, all except for her. She didn't know what she feared more, that something of hers was missing, or that she was merely not made to have it. Maud took in another breath, her eyes dropping to the floor. She paused for a moment, glancing back to Alicia.
Am I a bad girlfriend?
Finally, Alicia's eyes made the arduous journey upwards, trailing to glance over Maud, taking in her face for the first time since coming out. She was sad too, it was clear. Sad might be an understatement in this scenario, but it's not exactly like she was in a mindset for complex emotional analysis right now. Right now, this felt bad, and it looked like it felt bad for Maud too. She stayed quiet at first, looking at Maud with foggy eyes, confused by the question, but then she looked off to the side, off to the part of the couch where Jessie always sat. She hadn't said it, but she really liked that couch. It was comfy, but just firm enough to not give you back problems. The blankets on it were soft. It was in just the right place for a sunbeam to occasionally fall right on your face if you lie back. She had her own little spot on that couch, like a domesticated house cat claiming a big dog's bed. Ever since Jessie, she hadn't gone to lay on it even once. She shook her head slowly, and a soft, croaky voice emitted from the near-shivering girl. No, I don't think so. Jessie is. That's what she wanted to say, but it felt wrong too. It was not right to bring more adversity into this room after so much had just left it. She didn't want to fight. Maud's lips tightened further. In fact, her whole body tensed up. She gripped her arm as if letting go would mean her demise. Her nose prickled like a thorn-covered bush, her jaw now becoming tense from all the clenching. She inhaled a shaky breath, flipping the hair off her shoulders as she tried to regain some form of composure. She shouldn't. She couldn't. It wasn't right and it was embarrassing. Even if she's done it before, it didn't make it any less wrong. What happened before was a misstep, a mistake. Alicia had merely caught her on a bad time, and it would never happen again. She felt like a child in the worst way possible. Maud's face faltered for a moment towards Alicia as the words came out shaky and restrained. Her face twisted. "Can I cry?" she asked, but tears had already beat her to the question. Alicia looked back towards Maud questioningly, worry on her brow as she began to respond. "Yes? Oh." A gentle noise of recognition, a soft sound of understanding as she shuffled her feet uncomfortably. She sighed shakily. Maud was just as broken up as she was, huh? This hurt her too. This hurt her a lot more than it might have hurt to listen to. It was her first girlfriend. She had emphasized it so much before. She quickly wiped away the tear rolling down her own cheek with one of her blanket-padded hands, then shuffled slowly over to Maud. She wrapped her fabric wings around Maud's shoulders, standing on her tippy toes to bring their faces up to the same level. She placed one blanketed hand on the back of Maud's head as she closed the cocoon around her, pressing the girl's face into her shoulder. Sure, Alicia was sad. Kind of heartbroken, if anything. But she's had long enough to pity herself. For Maud, it was new. She had much more right to it than she did. She'd just ignore the tears that were filling her own eyes and focus on the ones now escaping Maud's. Maud let herself sink into Alicia, clinging onto her tightly. A wave of tears washed over her as her stifled cries became full-on sobs. Like an overflowing bathtub, Maud wept into Alicia's shoulder. Her chest stuttered as it rose and fell with no rhythm to it. She buried her face further into the blanketed hug, her hands finding themselves sinking into Alicia's hair as if trying to grasp for some sense of reality. Maud stuttered, the tears choking her. I didn't. She... Another sob came out of her. She clinged more, pink hair now becoming messy in Alicia's red. She felt like a house of cards in a tornado, like a twig under a giant's step. Everything in her begged to let Alicia hold her a little tighter, but her tongue remained stubborn. I am just so... Maud tried to gather herself. She stuck her hands in the water, splashing desperately for eloquence, words that would carry her gracefully and convey her emotions as gently as she could. But she merely found herself wading in water.
Sad,
she squeaked. As the tears and gasps for air came, Alicia found herself feeling a little more stable. She'd been balancing before, dangling from a thin string of sanity, but now that she had Maud clinging to her so desperately, clutching at her hair and her back as if she was the last anchor point to stay in this world, the last line of defense against the dark, she couldn't afford to be precarious anymore. It would have to wait. Right now she had to be a foundation, a sturdy rock to stand on, or else both of them would fall into a deep and dark pit, one they might not crawl out of. Or at least that's kind of how it felt. Maud didn't have to ask to be held tighter because Alicia knew. She knew the feeling so well. Too well, if anything. No words had to be spoken, even though Maud was desperately trying to, because if there was anyone who understood this feeling of grief and inadequacy, it was Alicia. She squeezed tighter, trained arms firmly grasping the girl. She took a deep, measured breath as she pulled Maud further in. Her voice croaked out again, still a little hoarse from her own crying. "I know, honey. I know. I get it." She let Maud cry for a few moments before swallowing and gathering a little more composure, at least enough to speak. Her voice was still soft and fragile, lacking the usual force of personality, but maybe that was better for the moment anyways. "You want to sit down? My legs are getting tired from standing on my toes." Maud nodded through the tears, sniffling as she led them towards the couch. Once she had sat down, she became keenly aware of her emotions once more. She finger-combed through her hair as sob after sob came bellowing out of her uncontrollably.
She was just... God, she was just being so mean, and...
Maud sniffled.
"We've only been dating for a month, and I'm not ready to move in with her, obviously, but she's making it seem like I'm being unreasonable that I'm not ready."
Maud twirled a piece of hair between her fingers.
I messed it up. I feel like I did, at least."
Maud breathed in shakily, trying to make her voice sound as legible as possible.
"And now she's gone, and you heard what she said, and you must feel so awful, and you always have been, and I'm so hard to love, and I got makeup on your shirt, and..."
Maud touched her cheek, seeing a splotch of liquid black from her mascara. It dawned on her that her mascara had been running down her face. Her expression twisted further into tears.
"I'm ugly!"
Maud let out another sob, letting the giant tears roll down her cheeks. Her palms pressed against her face in a desperate attempt to cover it up. There was no time like now that she felt so completely unlike herself. Alicia sat down next to Maud on the couch, hands pinned between her own legs as she watched Maud grasp at straws. It dawned on Alicia that she'd never seen her like this, never so out of sorts, never so sad, never so completely lost. It was kind of awful. Months ago, Alicia might have somewhere, somehow, been proud of being part of the reason that Maud is crying. But now that she knows Maud a little better, it was a bit different. Now that they had spent more time together, now that she had listened through the door as Maud put herself in the line of fire for her sake, just to protect her honor, it felt awful seeing her this bad. As Maud covered her face, Alicia scooched a little closer, lifting the blanket up again and putting it slowly over Maud's shoulders. Luckily, it was big enough for two people. That was kind of the point of buying it, though she didn't think it'd get to be used like this. She placed her hand on Maud's back, rubbing slow circles as she cried, softly cooing in an attempt to comfort. "Hey, you're not ugly. It's okay, I get it. You're not unreasonable, okay? A month is way too soon. If it wasn't for..." She sighed, remembering the words Jessie had hurled at Maud. Jessie didn't even know she was listening. Those words weren't even meant for her. That was really how she thought about her. Those were words said in private, earnest and deliberate. Just because I listened to her moan about her stupid ex. She really thought Jessie was a kind person. She'd really hoped. I'm sorry. This is all happening because of me. If I wasn't here, she probably wouldn't have asked you or even gotten mad at all, so... She sighed and slowly stood up, blanket sliding off her back. I'll be gone in the morning. You don't have to see me again. I'm sorry I ruined your relationship.
No!
Maud jumped slightly, holding on to Alicia's sleeve. She startled herself. What was this sudden urge? Months ago, if Alicia had said those words, she'd be thrilled. Excited, even, but now it felt like digging into the pit in her stomach. Maud looked up at her, big watery eyes and a giant doll-like frown. She hated this. Hated everything about this. How she felt, how she looked, how Jessie was acting, how she was acting. Alicia was the only thing Maud didn't hate right now. It felt pathetic. But she couldn't deny the comfort in Alicia. Maud pressed her head into Alicia's side, hiding her face as she tried to speak once more. Don't go. Her voice quivered. She held onto Alicia's sleeve so tightly, like a dream she feared forgetting when she woke up. She sniffled, mascara dripping onto her leg. Please, she squeaked. I don't want to be alone. I really don't want to be alone tonight. What was that? Where was that memory even from? Somewhere foggy and hazy in the back of her mind. When did she say that? Why did it feel like this was so similar? She stood unmoving for a few moments more before wordlessly sitting back down. She picked up a corner of the blanket, wrapping it back around herself, after which she partially turned towards Maud with uncertainty in her eyes. Why would she want her to stay after she was the source of so much hurt? Her name came up in every conversation. Her face was linked to everything that had gone wrong these last few weeks. Every moment of distress, every failed project, every painful word. It all came from her, like she was some kind of gas pipe, leaking invisible toxins into the people around her. She was a toxin. But still Maud wanted her to stay. Maybe she really had been brainwashed. No, that felt mean. That was mean of Jessie to say. It hurt Maud to say that, so she shouldn't think it either. She leaned her back against the armrest, tilting herself diagonally. She opened her arms up to the side invitingly, making a clear path for Maud to find her way leaned against, or rather on top of, her chest. Was this an appropriate gesture for the situation? Was it too intimate? Was it the wrong type of hug? She didn't really know, but it was the one that felt natural in the moment, and the memory from earlier was making her confused. Maud probably just wanted any comfort at all right now, no matter the shape it came in. And this was the shape Alicia was used to. Maud stared at Alicia for a moment, sniffling. She wasn't used to Alicia being so quiet like this. Part of her wanted to shake her to say something, but another part of her begged her not to. The energy for it was simply not there. Maud hesitated for a moment. Was this what roommates were supposed to do? Was this too intimate for their relationship at the given moment? Thoughts rushed through Maud's head at the mere sight of the invitation, but one remained clear. I want to. Maud crawled towards Alicia, wiping her face of the mascara so as to not damage the pajamas any further. She hovered over Alicia for a moment, before lowering herself into the hug. It wasn't long before she found herself melting into the embrace. Alicia was so soft, so warm. She smelled comforting in the way a long-loved stuffed toy did. Maud buried herself into her. It was odd. Somehow, Alicia seemed to fit more perfectly than Jessie did. But Maud tried not to think about that. It wasn't fair to compare them. She wasn't in the state to. Alicia found herself holding her breath as Maud hovered over her and releasing it when she finally settled. She picked up parts of the blanket, pulling it around Maud and her dotingly, like a songbird meticulously crafting its nest, making sure that every single detail is perfect. It's the best she could do to not feel guilty, to not feel like an invader, like Jessie had made her feel this whole time. Maud's arm wrapped around Alicia's stomach, locking herself into the embrace. Her hair spilled from their arms into a cascading mess. Alicia hadn't smelled like her vape in a while. Maud sniffled, her gaze staring off into space. She hadn't even noticed that the tears had already begun to settle. Something about the embrace soothed her instantly. Maud toyed with the fabric on Alicia's shirt for a moment.
Sorry, I got mascara on you,
Maud croaked.
I'll buy you a new one.
Alicia smiled a little at the apology, putting her hand on the back of Maud's head softly and running her fingers through her hair as she looked up towards the ceiling. The light humming of electricity and air conditioning filled her ears. It's all right. It gives it character, she muttered jokingly, though wistfulness still seemed to be the theme of the night. Hell of a story, too. Maud began to trace circles on Alicia's shirt. She was so gentle like this. It was no wonder girls loved spending the night with her if this is what she offered. Maud nestled her head further into Alicia. She was such a complicated girl. One moment she was as sharp as a blade, tongue cutting down everything in sight with a Cheshire cat smirk. But the other moment Maud found her resembling a memory she longed to stitch herself into for as long as the night went on. Maud blinked, eyelashes covered in tears. She felt Alicia's hand begin running through her hair, and an instant relief washed over her. In this moment, she felt as though nothing could harm her. The tallest wave or the strongest storm couldn't dare lay a scratch on her. Her eyelids faltered for a moment at the relaxation, but awoke once again to her own thoughts.
I know this may not be the best time, but...
Maud hesitated for a moment.
What exactly happened before with you and Jessie?
Alicia's hands halted their gentle exploration of Maud's scalp, pausing for just a second, the slow heaving up and down of her chest stopping at the middle of one of its slow ascents. The pause lasted only a second or two, just long enough to be noticeable. As her breathing continued and her fingers went back to tracing little circles and diving between strands of hair, she gathered her courage. It was bound to happen at some point, and well, at this point Maud deserved to know. I just wanted you to know who you're living with. She took a deep breath in and slowly began to speak, her soft, slightly smoky voice rhythmically guided by the percussion of her thumping heartbeat under Maud's ear. A little while ago, maybe a year and a half, I had a girlfriend. She paused to formulate her words, feeling Maud's arms and hands on her back, pressing lightly into her skin. She was warm. A proper one. Like not just a girl I was messing around with or anything. We were dating. Monogamy, living together. The whole shebang. She sighed. It was good for a while. It felt good being someone's someone. But I don't think she... Hold on. Was she really going to go into this right now? This massive bleeding wound in her heart? Did she really need to dig her fingers into it, revealing all the scars holding in that blackened, rotting memory? Maybe she should just... paraphrase. A lot happened, and, well, it ended badly. Really, really, really badly. She swallowed, trying not to place herself back there, back in that mindset, that moment in time in which every ragged breath she took made another chunk of the world fall away beneath her. There was a lot of fallout, and it followed me for weeks. Felt like everyone knew. Everyone had their judgment ready, and some of them had seen way too much of me. She cleared her throat, forcing down the memories as she scratched at her cheek, a benign motion to physically press on her eye to keep the tear from forming. She took a slightly shaky breath in and continued talking. I was in a bad place. It felt like my world was crumbling and, well, I was at a party, people were saying things, the wrong person found me, and suddenly I just couldn't take it anymore. I ran. I don't know for how long or with what purpose, but yeah. Coward. She repressed the thought. Maud wouldn't think that. Still, this was harder to talk about than she thought it would be. Could Maud hear her heartbeat accelerate? Could she hear her throat closing in on itself? I eventually ended up on a bench somewhere on campus, sitting there just crying my eyes out. Then, out of nowhere, or well, I guess I know now she had followed me from the party, Jessie appeared. She was a little drunk, but she saw me crying like the world was ending, and she sat down, and she listened to me. Her fingers trailed and slowed somewhat in their mission of comfort, as all of Alicia remembered the night in vivid detail. She remembered the cold air stinging at her wet cheeks, the way her chest hurt from the sobbing, the fact that she was so painfully sober and hated it. I told her everything that had happened, every awful little detail, until I'd cried so hard my throat was sore. She just sat there and comforted me through all of it, and I need to state this because it's really important, but no one had done that for me until then. For weeks I had dealt with it all alone, and this was the first time that anyone had actually done something like comfort me without seemingly any ulterior motive or any reason other than just to be kind. I thought Jessie was the kindest, warmest person I had ever seen. She was such a blast of sudden warmth out of nowhere. Back then it felt like staring at the sun, you know. She lingered on the sentiment, remembering the visual of that moment. The moment she had replayed time and time again, over and over, running it again and again until the memory was tired and warped. The moment where she made the decision and everything got irreversibly fucked. And then I did something really stupid. She tried to keep her breath from shaking, tried to keep her voice the same, but stability seemed to be slipping away. She was honestly kind with how she said it, because I didn't just come on to her. I forced myself on her. Like some kind of disgusting... She swallowed the words back, feeling where the train of thought was going and trying desperately to derail it before she made herself unintelligible again. I kissed her for a bit longer than was comfortable, honestly, because she was struggling against it. I was fueled by such desperation, such heartbreak, such horrible fucking loneliness that I guess someone showed me the slightest bit of kindness, and all I could think about was taking it, draining it of every drop of warmth it had. It was awful. I was awful. I hate myself for it. The last sentence came out with a lot more venom than she meant it to, but at least it was honest. She hadn't thought herself capable of it, and had always worried about what could have happened had Jessie been any more lenient with her. She removed her hands from Maud's hair, instead resting them on her back. The intimacy of that motion felt wrong now. Felt gross. Invasive. She pushed me off of her, of course. Slapped me. Yelled at me for what felt like hours. Said really hurtful things. Things that cut really deeply, but I mean, I deserved it. I couldn't really take it, but I did. I did because I immediately knew I'd done something horrible. It made a horrible night even worse. She chewed on her lips slightly, feeling the pressure in her sinuses as her tears began to well up again, forming little puddles of moistures in the ridges of her already bruised eyelids. She cleared her throat, poorly hiding the fact that she was starting to leak from the eyes as she continued talking. Obviously, I started avoiding her from that day on. I just figured that if that had happened to me, I'd never want to see that person again, so I made sure of that. I avoided all her usual spots. I stayed clear of the swimming pool and all its members. I ate lunch at different times, stopped going to certain lectures, moved to a different dorm building. I really tried hard to make it so she never had to deal with it again, ever. Which is why I was so confused when she fuck, hold on. Her voice broke with frustration. She wiped at her eyes with her arm, sniffing her now runny nose as her lips trembled in a strained frown. She took a few deep breaths in and out before continuing again. These last few weeks have been really hard, and I thought I deserved it all at first, but recently I've started to think that what she wants from me is not something I or or anyone really can deliver on. Because I can't change what happened. I really wish I could, I do, but yeah. I guess now she sees me as just some kind of predator or pest. It was getting really hard to keep composure, and it showed on her face, straining and pulling weird and unattractive expressions. I have never told anyone, but She felt herself gasping for air as her breathing became irregular, coming out in little shocks of speech. I'm so fucking embarrassed. I don't know what I could have done differently. I just don't know what to do. I don't want to be this anymore. That was the crack that made the dam burst, as quiet tears were accompanied by quiet sobs. Shockingly so, actually. It was almost masterful how quiet Alicia managed to cry, as if she had years of experience hiding it from other people. If only Maud knew how right that was. How good Alicia had become at never crying when anyone could see, and doing it soft enough so no one could hear. Maud was just the exception, it seemed. Maud took a moment to fully process what Alicia had just told her. For a moment, an eternity stretched out with the sound of Alicia's heart beating in her chest. Maud at this point had turned her head upward, looking at Alicia. Her brows knit together, corners of her mouth in a slight downturn as she watched Alicia begin to unravel. Giant tears falling from eyes that refused to meet reality, though it was staring straight into the well of it. Every thought flashed through her mind, every possible response, every possible scenario. It flipped right before her eyes like an old film beginning to play, the clicking of each moment as it came and went faster than time did. What was she meant to say? What was the right thing to say? Would it be the same as the responsible thing to say? Maud chewed at her lip. She did not mean to let the silence linger, keenly aware of how every moment she spent quiet was another moment leaving Alicia alone. It was not enough that their arms were tangled when the absence gouged such a pit between them. Maud parted her lips, then closed them, parted them again, eyes searching for answers, then closed them once more. The silence stretched into an eternity, and the warmth that she'd been fostering by wrapping them both in blankets sunk into the couch, draining from her agonizingly slowly, like honey dripping off a spoon. It felt heavy. It's always what happened. She'd think and think until her thoughts grinded against the edge of her skull, and then she'd cry and feel so heavy, like a block of concrete hanging from her neck, weighing on her chest. Another lifetime passed them before Maud seemed to gain the courage to break the silence. It felt awful seeing Alicia collapse into this. Her heart ached at the sight of it, just like that one night. I'm not gonna say what you did was okay, because it wasn't, and I'm sure you know that. Maud began looking up at Alicia. What you did to Jessie was unacceptable, and she has every right not to forgive you, but... Her eyes scanned over Alicia in a genuine look of sincerity. She reached up, wiping away the giant streaks of tears rolling down Alicia's cheek like a storm on a car window. You've been so guilty and sorry, and I just... Maud rested her head back onto Alicia's chest, hugging her tighter. I don't want to think you're a monster, she mumbled, fingers toying with the fabric once more. I'm pretty sure you're not. You just... did something bad. It wasn't okay, but I feel like you're kinda killing yourself over it. Maud sighed. Her head spun like a top. It flickered back and forth, making her dizzy with information. A shaky inhale came over her, an aftershock of her crying. I don't think you're a bad person. You're just a person. Unacceptable. Unforgivable. She knew that. She did. Still, it hurt hearing it from someone else. From someone who had been so delightfully removed from her mistakes until now. She was ready to accept it. Losing Maud. Amputating yet another bleeding limb so she could keep moving. But? Alicia looked down at Maud, anticipation in her eyes. She didn't know if it was okay to hope for anything here. She didn't deserve forgiveness. Not from Jessie's girlfriend, of all people. She had driven a wedge in their relationship with her past actions, just like she had left her stain on Jessie. Just like how she thoughtlessly inserted herself into the lives of so many others, just to leave a mark. She was living proof that sometimes scars could be pretty and still sting. The soft touch of Maud's fingers wiping away her tears burnt at her skin, like hot velvet gliding across sandpaper. She tried to say something, but what? What was there to say to any of this? The arms tightening around her body felt like they might crush her, but at the same time brought a comfort so alien to her. She cuddled with girls all the time, showed them this type of affection, but never had someone's touch slowed her breathing so much, bringing her to something that wasn't exactly peace, but the closest thing to calm she was capable of. Her lungs hurt. She wanted to heave and gasp for air, but she couldn't. She felt like she was starved of oxygen, like a vacuum had formed in her chest cavity. Through a strained voice she spoke, as if her throat was filled with gravel. Why do you think that? Jessie was right. That's why it hurts so fucking much, because she looks right into my fucking head and she grabs and pulls and it hurts. I hate it because she's right about me. She's always been right about me, and I just... She was spilling her guts here. She never talked about this to anyone, let alone her sort of rival roommate. The way Maud looked at her, though, the way she held her, it made her want to bare her soul. If anyone was going to judge it, deem its worth, see how mangled it is and toss it aside, she'd rather it be Maud than anyone else for some reason. I'm so tired of running away, she spoke with a voice like cracked glass. How much longer until it's okay to be okay again? What do I need to do to... She stopped in the middle of her sentence, covering her mouth with her hand, eyes squinted together in a pained expression. She whispered, voice high-pitched and weak, barely loud enough to be audible, words forced through taut vocal cords. I'm sorry. I can't. Maud glanced up towards Alicia, whose face was contorted into a shape like wringing a cloth clean of water. This was Alicia. Not in her entirety, of course not. It wasn't her in the sense of peeking behind the red curtains and seeing everything for what it is and what it will ever be. It was her in the way a cut lets you see the blood beneath the skin. Not the bone or the muscle or the organs. Just the blood. Maud longed to find the answer to her questions. There must have been one. If there was a question, there had to be an answer. To everything. No matter how difficult or how long, there would always be an answer. That's what scientists literally do. But Maud was not a scientist. Not in this universe, at least. In this universe, she was the Maud who made color-coded chore boards. The one who let her roommate carry her drunken self home. She was the Maud who scolded Alicia for not using a coaster and leaving water rings on their wooden coffee table. She was the Maud who told Alicia not to track mud into their apartment. She was the Maud who started calling the apartment theirs without even noticing. And right now, she was the Maud who laid unmoving in this girl's arms, watching helplessly as her mouth couldn't mold an answer. I don't know. Her eyes dropped slightly. I don't know how long it'll be until you're okay. She chewed at her lip in thought. That was probably not what Alicia wanted to hear, but anything else would have been a shot in the dark. Maud thought for a little while longer before glancing back up at Alicia. Her tight hug loosened suddenly, arms sliding off Alicia's stomach and head rising from Alicia's chest. But only slightly. Maud scooted herself up on the couch, resting her head on the armrest right where Alicia's was. Now she met Alicia at eye level. Alicia squeezed her eyes shut as Maud shifted her weight off of her, leaving a cold imprint of her absence in her wake. She felt almost sad at the warmth disappearing, the reassuring weight and pressure on her chest no longer holding her down. Now it almost felt like at any moment she could just float away, stripped of everything that was pinning her to reality, everything keeping her somewhat sane. Maud's body turned towards Alicia, eyes searching, not for an answer, more like a lighthouse. Maud reached up, wiping Alicia's tears away as she began to speak. I think you gave Jessie a little too much power with how you view yourself, Maud mumbled, being gentle around the puffy eyes. The truth is, I don't know you fully. I know you risked your safety to defend me. I know you care enough to make the girls you bring back as comfortable as possible. You're hugging me now when you don't need to, but it's almost all I know about you. You could be the worst person ever. Maud moved Alicia's hair away from her face. But I don't think a truly bad person would worry this much about being a bad person. She felt skin brush against hers and a presence take up the space next to her. She slowly opened her eyes again, turning her head to meet the new presence, only to come face to face with Maud. Incredibly closely face to face. Her cheeks were already flushed due to her crying, but a new peach-pink coat of paint was applied to her features as she took in the fine details of the girl laying next to her. She swallowed the nerves gathering in her throat as she listened to the words Maud dedicated to her. Why was this suddenly so incredibly intimate? Well, not that it wasn't a little intimate before, but this felt really like a lot, right? Was she reading it wrong? Was she the only one who felt the invisible pull? The electricity prickling at the back of her neck? Yes, she was. This is exactly what happened with Jessie. She wouldn't allow herself to repeat the mistake. She was just vulnerable, that's all. She was vulnerable, and a very pretty, very warm, very kind girl was giving her attention. It was just some kind of fucked up psychological response in order to try to cope. She couldn't listen to that voice. Not again. But since when did she start seeing Maud as kind? Actually, how long has it been since she wasn't? She couldn't think of a time where Maud had been unpleasant towards her past the night at the party after she carried her back. It's only really been kindness, hasn't it? Kindness that she was being shown in great amounts right now. She looked into Maud's eyes, sentimentality overflowing from hers in the form of big, heavy tears. You gave her too much power. A bad person wouldn't worry this much about being a bad person. That was it. The thoughts that had been stuck in her head were set free, finally being given a vessel to be ferried out with. Maybe Jessie didn't know her all that well after all. How could she? They'd had one conversation one night and then never spoke again. Why was she so convinced she knew her in and out? Why was it that she trusted her words so blindly when it came to how much she was worth? Maybe she was using Jessie to punish herself. She had given the girl a weapon and a vendetta and let her tear her apart piece by piece. Maybe Jessie was wrong. She felt the ache in her chest, the hurt taking new form. Instead of guilt and loathing, it was filled now with grief. Somehow, that felt so much easier. The stream of tears kept flowing like a broken dam, her face like a child who dropped their ice cream cone. "Thank you," she managed to croak. "Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you." She lunged forward, wrapping her arms around Maud, pushing them under her armpits to get a proper hold on her. This way, Maud's arms were shielding Alicia. This way, she was the one being protected. She hadn't done it on purpose, but the feeling of catharsis and safety were undeniable. She cried into Maud's shoulder, mumbling quiet thank yous until the words got tired and lost their meaning. Maud met Alicia with open arms and a tight squeeze back. How long had Alicia been rotting away inside herself with this? How long did she convince herself that staring into the sun was the only way she'd see the light at the end of the tunnel? Maud could imagine, and it pained her even more to know she now found it in Alicia. Maud smoothed her hair down, letting Alicia sob relentlessly into her shoulder. Maud thought back to every instant Jessie had thrown jabs at her. All the small, unnecessary digs and glares, and how the punishments seemed to far outweigh the crime. Now she laid with this girl in her arms, practically overflowing with so much guilt her limbs might as well have fallen to the floor. Maud furrowed her brow. She wasn't particularly interested in someone who could reduce a person to such a state without batting an eye. Someone who actively sought out to hurt someone already on their knees. Still, it hurt. Maud sighed, continuing to comfort Alicia. She pulled the blanket over them once more, cocooning Alicia in a warm shield.
"Shh, it's okay,"
Maud whispered, her fingers gliding smoothly off the cherry red hair. "It's okay. Just let it out." She nodded, patting Alicia's back every now and again to encourage the release. Alicia let the entirety of her weight drain out. She sobbed and cried and squeezed it all into Maud, left it all to evaporate on the shoulders of this beacon of comfort. It was both so relieving and so completely haunting to feel so much of herself be expelled at once. Like a pressure had built inside her body, or rather, inside her mind, and now that a valve had been turned, and an opening was made, it was terrifying how little was left at the end of it all. How empty it left her. How much she wanted to fill it with something. It was strange, though. She didn't want to fill it with Maud. Not like that. Not after this. Which was odd. Didn't she want to kiss her just moments before? Wasn't that the same? She was left pondering the question as the final sobs quieted down and her breathing became slowly more and more regular as the comfort of the embrace began to set in. The warmth of this cocoon. She could actually feel it this time. She felt the hand on the back of her head, stabilizing her like a baby whose neck is too weak to hold up its head on its own. She bewildered herself with the odd comparison, but quietly permitted it regardless. It did stabilize her, after all. She felt secure. You must come for girls all the time, huh? This doesn't feel like it's your first time. Alicia broke the quiet, which was relatively serene, but she easily mistook it for being tense, needing breaking. Are you the girl in the bathroom at the party, giving people life advice or something? Soon, Maud felt Alicia's body begin to come down from its sob session. Her shoulders began to stabilize as her chest opened up to deeper and more stable breaths. Whenever you're sobbing, it always feels like it will never end, until it does. Maud's hand continued to brush down Alicia's hair as she let the girl collect herself. She let out a scoff of a laugh at Alicia's observations. I think so. Maud thought back to the drunken girls in bathrooms that have sobbed to her about a boyfriend or a girlfriend or an ex or a best friend. Maud, of course, would always resort to leave them, which wasn't always the right choice, but sometimes all they needed was to know others wanted better for them. I've seen a lot of crying drunk girls. Maud glanced down at Alicia before looking back straight ahead. You were one of them. She giggled a little. Maud's chest relaxed, seeing Alicia's tears beginning to dry up. For now she was left with the aftershocks of stuttering breathing, but that she could handle. Alicia chuckled quietly into the embrace, shaking slightly, her lungs and abs still weak from the crying session. Oh God, don't remind me. I'm trying not to think too much about that night. Not a lie in the slightest, actually. She kinda had been trying to avoid thinking about it because the things they said to each other were a little hard to understand. Wrapping her head around why Maud would possibly say she cares about her was a task of Herculean proportions. Not something she'd be able to do anytime soon. Maud remembered Jessie. She didn't know if it was just the pull of the moment, or if it had been a long time coming, or if simply it had been destined from the start. But the butterflies that followed Jessie's name had dispersed into the night air. It seems as though they had been for a while now. Underneath the quiet of the early hours, Maud found herself beginning to tip herself over like a pitcher full of water. She found Alicia already spilled across the table, melting into her arms. There was also a sense to share in a way that would make Alicia feel less alone. Can I tell you something? Maud twirled a piece of hair between her fingers, staring off. Jessie and I, we didn't... She sighed. Well, we didn't actually have sex. We got close to it, but I just... Maud shook her head, looking towards the ceiling. I would get so nervous, and I'd get so weird. It's not as if it's my first time. I'm not a virgin. She jokingly narrowed her eyes down at Alicia. I don't know. I mean, I found her attractive, but... Maud remembered all the times The hands sliding up thighs, the fingers tugging at waistbands, the whispers and begging and kisses down the stomach. The hair tangled between fingers like water between river rocks. The almosts. Maud frowned. We just never got there, I guess. The question came as a surprise, though that seemed to be a trend of the night, surprising each other. Alicia let herself sink into the hug a little further, eyes scanning the walls as Maud began to talk. Oh, it was about sex? Well, good. That's actually something she had a good amount of experience in. She was never quite as good at comforting and advice, but good lord, could she give some good tips on how to get all close and personal with someone. This particular issue seemed to be a little less about how to do it right and more about Jessie doing it wrong, if she had to take a guess. Well, she took a deep breath in, chest pressing against Maud's as her ribcage ballooned outwards. Let's get into it then. Alicia pulled herself away from the tight embrace a little more, coming to rest her head back on the armrest so she could look Maud in the face as she talked, gauge her reactions, and know if she was saying the right things. If she could even remotely repay Maud for what she just did for her, then maybe she wouldn't come out of the night feeling like she got away with it somehow. Sex with guys is very different from sex with girls. Not that I'm an expert on the first one. I bailed out the first time I got close and never looked back. Men look weird naked. She pulled a face, reminded of her brief middle school encounter with male sexuality, and part of her still wanted to flinch and recoil. So, it's not weird to be nervous about it. Like, your first gay experience is always going to be a little bit existentially terrifying. It was for me, at least. She rubbed Maud's arm comfortingly, underneath the soft cover of the blanket. Touch had become pretty casual between the two of them tonight, but she didn't want to focus on the how and the why. It was comfortable being like this, with hands brushing faces and arms all entangled, so it felt like a shame to ruin it by overthinking. This is just how they were for the night, and that's fine. But I am kind of wondering, does Jessie ever, check in with you? Ask you what you want? 'Cause Alicia's face shifted a little uncomfortably for a moment, but it was a world of difference from the usual expressions that would be provoked whenever the situation with Jessie was mentioned. I might not know the most about Jessie, since I've kind of tried avoiding doing that, and I might have a bit of a biased perspective, because every time I came in it felt like she put on a performance on purpose, but she crunched up the skin around her nose bridge and thought, as if she was about to say something a little bit unpleasant. And, well, she was. Every time I saw her all over you, she'd be really into it, and you'd kind of just sit there and, I don't know, in my experienced opinion, it doesn't really feel like she ever tried to talk to you about what you want things to look like, or asked you whether something she was doing was good for you, or she really cared too much about how you felt. Alicia winced at her own words for a moment, quickly backtracking. Okay, maybe not that last one, but she looked directly at Maud for a moment in consideration. Look, let me be blunt. I've had sex with girls before that before me only ever knew guys. Fuck, Mona was supposed to be one of them. Taking a girl's gay virginity is fun, but only if you do it right, and the right way to do it is very different from having sex with a veteran lesbian sex machine. She resettled on the couch a little, pulling her arm up so she could lean her head onto it and feel a little more casual about the way they were positioned. It felt a little bit like a sleepover, she just realized. Girls feel different. They have sex differently, they experience things differently. If you're dealing with a first-timer, in my opinion, you've got a duty to be gentle. Be careful and explorative. Be a little teasing, but don't push until you've let them feel things out. Everything is new for them, so you have to ease them in. Otherwise, they freeze up and get turned off. That, and you have to check in with them. Ask them what feels good, what doesn't, what things you did that they liked, what they want to try, what they want more of, less of, none of. It's different for everyone, and honestly, people can be very surprising in what they do and don't like. I never assume. Alicia pursed her lips and thought for a moment. If Jessie was just bulldozing through all those steps like you had done it 1,000,000 times before, no wonder you'd freeze up. Maud gave Alicia her attention, listening carefully as Alicia put in her 2 cents. It wasn't long before it dawned on Maud that perhaps she may have been wrong about Alicia. In a small way, at least. Her fooling around had been less about fooling around and more of giving women a good experience. It was clear from how she spoke that she had experience under her belt, and positive ones at that. Hearing her talk about how you should be gentle and slow, take the time to know your partner and see where their boundaries and pleasures lie. It was no wonder girls kept coming back for more, like Alicia was a soft serve on a summer's day. Maud frowned slightly. I suppose, yeah, she did a bit. Her lips pouted slightly, the space between her brows crinkling together as she plunged into her memory. I know she didn't mean to, because she was just excited and horny, but... Maud blew a piece of hair away from her face. I'm delicate, you know? I'm a delicate lady. She huffed, seeming a little tough for something claiming to be delicate. Alicia's eyes, though still a little puffy and bloodshot, looked at Maud with sympathy at first, but quickly distanced themselves when she took notice of the softness in her gaze. She fondly listened to the girl's huffy declarations of fragility and sensitivity, retorting quietly, with a smile. Could have fooled me, Augustine. It was almost impressive how well Alicia hit the nail on the head. Clearly she'd seen her fair share. But Maud couldn't help and wonder about something she'd said. Girls feel different. It was true, of course. Maud could only assume the experience was far more different, but she wasn't quite sure what Alicia meant exactly, what the specifics of it were. Maud's eyes spaced a little in thought. You said girls feel different. She began speaking, without a thought, still trying to logic her way through the question. Her eyes suddenly came back towards Alicia's. They were filled with genuine curiosity, slightly puffed and doughy from the crying. A silky piece of cotton candy hair fell across her face. She spoke, voice slightly whispered and raspy. What do they feel like? Her smile didn't seem eager to fade, remaining comfortably plastered on her face as Alicia sunk further into the couch cushion, shifting her weight to be more self-reliant now that she was no longer using Maud as her support. Her legs slowly shifted around, brushing against Maud's as she somewhat clumsily tried to find a good place to put them that wasn't just shamelessly putting them between those of the girl across from her. And then that question. Oh God, that question. It was such a dangerous one carrying such immense implications and meanings. Had any other girl asked her that question in any other situation, she'd have given them the experience of a lifetime. She'd have held a contest with the bedsheets on who'd the girl melt into first. She wouldn't have stopped until at least 5 rounds in, until the girl wouldn't have been capable of standing up, let alone move her legs in the first place. But the situation was very different this time. It was Maud. And it was after that conversation. It was a girl in a dedicated relationship one new to dating girls, one who she had always had a rocky relationship with at best and was much kinder to her than she deserved. And then it was this atmosphere, right after having cried her eyes out, right when she was vulnerable, right when she was already tempted to repeat mistakes she couldn't. Then again, how else would you go about showcasing this? She had to set some kind of example, and she did kind of want to touch Maud. Even though it was bad, she knew it was bad, but she didn't need anything else, nothing more than that, just a simple, friendly touch. One that implied or expected nothing in return, just a showcase, just an example. Alicia had looked entirely bewildered this whole time, eyes slightly wide and lips slightly parted in hesitation, before her expression twisted into something more bashful, with a timid smile and eyes cast downwards. What a question. She took a deep breath in, bringing her other hand up between them slowly. Well, for one, girls are softer. Their hand slowly came up to touch Maud's cheek, softly pressing in before sliding up to cup the side of her face entirely. Like, literally. The skin is thinner, more elastic, less oil. You might be surprised at just how soft we really feel. She brought her hand down from the face to the arm, where her fingers lightly traced the skin downwards, starting at the shoulder and slowly making its way to the wrist. But it's not just softness and delicateness. The whole experience is different. She lightly chuckled, tracing the fingers back up the arm as her eyes flicked up to meet Maud's. Girls, at least the ones that know what they're doing, know the importance of a proper lead-up. They understand how easy it is to fall out of it when you don't take the time to get in the mood. Her fingers slowly danced through the air again, finding themselves resting on the side of Maud's head, gently putting pressure under the base of her jaw. Girls are also, in general, more sensitive, and in a lot more places. Having sex with a girl means having sex with someone who understands that it's not just about touching what's between your legs, but also about touching everywhere that isn't. The hand went exploring again, tracing down the musculature of Maud's neck, tracing a collarbone and tiptoeing along the shoulder. The secret is, with girls, if you do it right, you might not even have to touch below the waist. I've had girls crumple just by touching here. The hand snaked its way around, finding its way under Maud's arm, fingers pressing into the soft tissue under her armpit. Or here. The fingers trailed down to the waist, hand slowly wrapping its way around to press subtly into the divot above the hip bone. Or, for some of the freakier ones, even here. The hand hovered back up and splayed out on Maud's sternum, gliding gently upward as her thumb parted to wrap around one side of the throat, with the rest of her fingers brushing the other, until they were all the way pressed up underneath Maud's jaw. She wasn't squeezing, didn't grab hold of her throat, just gently reminded her that the hand was there. Some of us are softer than others. Some of us have muscles. Some of us smell good. Some of us have long fingers. Others have long tongues. But either way, one thing is for sure. They may be able to find all your buttons that when pressed just right. Alicia caught herself, retracting the hand from Maud's throat slowly. This was getting out of hand. She'd gotten so lost in the moment, and whilst none of what she did just now was entirely out of the realm of platonic touch, to some degree, depending on how weird the friendship was, she knew the tension would be enough to make her do something stupid again. She had pushed the boundaries enough. Can, make you feel good. Yeah, girls feel really good, so yeah, if they're doing it right, you'll know. That's what I'm saying. All the confidence had drained from her, the charged, flirtatious lilt to her voice melting away like snow before the sun. She looked sheepish, as if she was caught doing something bad. Maud watched as Alicia demonstrated it for her, going as slowly and gently as she could. The beating in her heart quickened, heart slamming so hard against her ribcage that it echoed up to her ears. But this meant nothing. Of course not. Alicia'd probably done this routine with many girls on the same couch with the same manner and the same look on her face that made Maud almost want to stay a little longer. This wasn't special. Maud pressed her lips into a tight line as Alicia's hand laid still beneath her jaw. A warmth spilled across her cheeks like thick red paint. Maud's eyes flickered across Alicia's features, taking in every detail. The curve of her lashes, the dip in her cupid's bow, the small imperfections on her skin, the pink in her lips. The pink in her lips. Maud let Alicia pull her hand away as she ended the demonstration. As Alicia began her closing statement, Maud remained quiet as ever. It was as if every thought and absolutely no thoughts at all were filling her head simultaneously. One moment it was a busy crosswalk at 5 p.m. on a Wednesday, everyone trying to make sense of it all. One moment it was a sun-soaked living room in the quiet of a Sunday afternoon. And one moment it was this. It was staring at a girl in the dim light of a lamp with hands folded awkwardly against the other. Maud glanced down at Alicia's hand that she had just pulled away. She reached out, taking it gently. Not to pull or to tug, but just to hold. Her fingers ran smoothly across Alicia's own fingers, trying to remember what the touch felt like. Maud parted her lips. She gulped slightly, looking back up towards Alicia. A small tug in her stomach. Alicia remained timidly still as she watched Maud flush with gentle red heat. That was too far, she knew it. Probably gave Maud completely the wrong idea, or maybe she just confirmed what Jessie said about her. A few hours from now, after the initial shock faded, Maud will realize she had once again been on the edge of pushing a boundary that wasn't asking to be pushed. Her eyes darted back and forth as every spot they landed on didn't seem right, didn't seem like it wanted them there. Where was Maud looking so intensely? What was she staring at? She followed her eyes. Was there something on her face, or was she looking at her lip? Her mind jolted awake as fingers carefully slid between her own, fingers tracing across her palm and sending pleasant little tingles across her arm and up her neck. The sound of Maud's voice set its hooks in her, keeping her locked in place. She felt her stomach twist and squeeze in anticipation as Maud slowly faltered her way towards a question, a request, a statement. She didn't know. She didn't know what to expect, what to steel herself for, how to approach the situation and compose herself. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it normal that she was this nervous? She felt her heart beating in her throat, breath held in quiet impatience as the words began to form on Maud's lips. She squeezed Maud's hands subconsciously, nerves taking a stranglehold of her muscles before Maud suddenly pulled away, breaking the tension. I should call Jessie. Maud broke the moment, sitting up. Silky hair followed her up, as did the smell of vanilla.
Thank you for,
She gestured towards the couch and Alicia.
the comfort. I appreciate it.
Maud gave a small, genuine smile before searching for her phone. The first thing that hit her was disappointment. Then, immediately confusion about where the disappointment was coming from. Was she expecting something to happen? She felt so stupid, so naive and presumptuous. Of course nothing would happen. Jessie was still Maud's girlfriend, after all. She'd almost made her a cheater. She mumbled in response to Maud, trying her best not to seem affected.
Yeah, thank you as well. Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
The final words got stuck in her throat as she felt her vocal cords protest at the offer of further comfort, forcing her to clear her throat and break her composure once more.
Good luck with her.
Maud hummed, crawling over Alicia's legs as she stood herself up. She took one last look at Alicia, though Maud tried not to linger her stare too long. She cleared her throat, smoothing her pajamas down as she gave a small smile.
Well, good night.
And with that, Maud sent herself straight into her room, phone in hand and not looking back.